ever had an MRI or an X-ray? Well, you have Marie Curie to thank for that. Let me tell you the story of this brilliant scientist who changed the course of scientific knowledge and whose story might tell us a bit more about the hidden costs of obsessive, relentless dedication to one's purpose. Maybe her story holds just that little bit of inspiration that you're needing for your journey. Marie Curie was born Maria Skłodowska in Russian-ruled Warsaw, which we now know today as Poland. She was born into a society that was very traditional and women were not necessarily encouraged or allowed to pursue an education. But in Maria's household, it was different. The only problem was that there was no money to send them to university, she and her sister. So what did they do? They made a pact, and for the first couple of years, Maria would work and support her sister's education in Paris, and then when her sister was done, she would then fund Maria so that Maria could go on to study physics, as she had always wanted to do. And so that is what they did. To keep her side of the bargain, Maria decided to take on a job as a governess, which meant long days of caring for children, tutoring them, taking care of the household, and then at night when everyone was finally asleep and they didn't need her for anything else, she would then continue to study through the night by candlelight, studying advanced mathematics and physics and all kinds of complicated things that I can only imagine. And she would wake up the next day and repeat over and over again. She did this for 6 whole years, and her sister, Bronya, graduated as a medical doctor. It was finally Maria's turn to take her place at an actual university to do science, where the science was actually happening. I just want to shout out both Bronya and Maria for keeping that deal, because 6 years of working and sending money, and after 6 years the sister said, I am going to honor my word, and actually did. And Maria had not given up on her dream to go back to school. 6 years later, she kept the dream alive, and she kept her mind sharp. I just think that's so brilliant, and that was just the beginning. So good sis Maria went on to study at the Sorbonne, a university in Paris that was very prestigious for the kind of work that Maria wanted to do in physics. This was something she had dreamed of for such a long time, that once she was there at the university, she poured herself into her work with the kind of focus and determination that left her classmates in awe. They were just like, who is this girl? And like when they go out drinking and partying and have a good time, Maria will be in the library going over her notes, okay? She didn't work that hard to come here and now start playing games with the kids. She was obviously a brilliant student as a result, and soon her lecturers and professors in the university took an interest to her and started to mentor her. That guidance from her professors and her relentless work ethic saw her graduate as the top of her class. Top physics student in her class. And then she didn't stop there. She went on to sign on for another degree in mathematics. Who does that? She continues to do a PhD. While she's looking for a laboratory to conduct her experiments, she's introduced with this man called Marie Curie. This is a very well-respected physicist in his own right, and he had lab space, and they got introduced. It started out as a work relationship. They were here doing science, but before you know it, the things that were supposed to not happen started to happen, and they started catching feelings for each other. The man was just so captivated by her brilliance. At first, she was hesitant because she was like, I'm here for my science. I don't want to do anything that's going to distract me from it. But because of how supportive she saw that he was of her work, she gave in, and eventually they got married and had 2 beautiful children. Pierre quickly became her biggest supporter, backing her ideas and working alongside her through some of the most grueling experiments. In 1903, she became the first woman to receive a PhD in physics at the Sorbonne. So you know how all PhD candidates in their dissertations are like, this study is meant to fill a gap in the field, and then you go to look for the gap and it's this tiny little as speck of a gap that this study is trying to fill. Maria's own dissertation didn't just fill a gap, it literally catapulted us into another dimension of science entirely. She created a whole new area of science that didn't exist before. Maria added 2 new elements to the periodic table. You all did periodic table in chemistry, right? I know I did the periodic table. And don't ask me anything I don't remember. But polonium and radium were the 2 elements that she added single-handedly almost to the periodic table. Radioactivity, radioactive energy. She's the reason why we know these concepts today. I don't understand the science, but like, she discovered the first radioactive elements, particles in rocks. And it's because of that work that today we have things like MRIs and we can do X-rays and stuff like that. The discovery of these two new elements led her to win a Nobel Peace Prize. They almost didn't include her in the prize. They wanted to give it to her husband and this other mentor that she had who had worked with her. But her husband was like, excuse me? None of this will be possible without Maria, so please give credit where credit is due. So she ended up receiving that award together with her husband and this other fella that I now forget his name. And then she proceeded from that work to win yet another Nobel Peace Prize in chemistry. She is the first person, not first woman, the first person ever to win that prize in 2 different disciplines. And this one she won all by herself. Yes. What makes her story such a powerful example of that obsessive dedication I'm talking about is, so they had done their research, they confirmed that there is something in this rock that makes it produce energy on its own without any additional forces. For it to become an actual discovery, because she had proved it in theory, but to prove it, she had to actually collect a measurable quantity of this element so that we can measure it, we can see it, we can say, oh, this is it in its purest form, this is how it reacts, this is how it does. The element they were looking for was inside the rock, but there's also a whole lot of other shit in the rock, right? So for them to get the element that they want, they need to separate it from everything else. To get this little handful of that element, of that chemical, whatever it is, they had to go through two tons of rocks, staring. They were here day and nights. She was exhausted, her body was broken, but this woman was like, I will die before I let this thing go. Because everybody else was like, you've already proved that it's there now. Do you have to go this far? Leave it alone. She was like, no, she was here. Cooking it. And then she finally was able to extract just enough to prove to the scientific community that this element is real. And that's how a whole new field of science was born. And her work didn't end at the lab. In the First World War, she designed mobile X-rays that she called little Curies. You know the X-ray most, you can see through the meat and into the bone and stuff, so they could see where a bullet is and stuff like that and help. This woman was not just doing research and teaching at the university, she was training these women in how to run these procedures in the crisis situation that they were going into, and then leading them into the crisis to do the job. What an absolute legend, honestly. Like, I'm sure I have butchered the science of it like proper, but you can't tell me that you don't understand the magnitude of the story and just how stubborn and resilient Marie Curie was. At some point, she lost her husband. He died in a car accident, and she kept a grief diary for a whole year. This woman was just like this in every aspect of her life. For a whole year, she journaled about the pain and everything. But time passed, she moved on. And then good sis decided that she was going to have an affair with a married man. Maria. She was caught and they were in a meeting. I would have died. They were in a meeting with the top scientist. She was the only woman in that room when they announced publicly that Maria had been having an affair with a married man. And they even tried to tell her not to come and collect her prize because of, PR. We don't want to bring your scandal into our scientific community. And she was like, excuse me? She didn't want to go at first, but when they told her that she couldn't come, she said, okay, watch me. And then she carried herself and she went there and picked up her award, because you are not going to take away from my achievement because of an affair. An affair? Are you serious? Have men not done worse and still been praised for their accomplishments? So why must I be different? And that's just the kind of badassery that I am here for. Yeah, so that was Marie Curie's life. Sometimes your life's purpose is also going to be the thing that kills you. And in her case, because of that consistent exposure to radioactive substances, she got sick. At the time, they didn't yet understand just how dangerous radioactive rays were. And she died. She lost her life to the thing that she had spent her whole life pursuing. If that is not just an iconic story, I don't know what is. So why does this story matter to me right now in my life? Why is it important for me and potentially important for you out there who, like me, is chasing your dreams, trying to live a life driven by your purpose, right? And you're really trying to go hard and make this thing a reality against incredible odds. There are two things that I'm getting from this story, and maybe it is also helpful for you. The first one for me is really just the cost of this path that we are on, right? I mean, in Marie Curie's case, it's a very concrete, you can see the cost, because the very thing that she dedicated her entire life to is what ended up killing her. Her journals that she documented a lot of her work in, and the process, the behind the scenes and everything in, are still highly radioactive till today. Marie Curie passed in 1930 something, and in 2025 you can't just go touching and playing with her stuff without protective garments, because you might just, be exposed to these things that could harm you. Isn't that insane? But that just really puts it in a real concrete way, like a way that we can really see there is a massive cost to what she did. What she did was groundbreaking. It changed so much about how the world operates today, but it cost her life. In last week's video, we were talking, this is part 2, right? Last week's video, we were talking about Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan environmentalist who influenced the planting of over 30 million trees in Kenya. But to achieve that feat, Wangari Maathai was imprisoned like 3 times during her years of activism in Kenya. So there is a real tangible cost to the things that we want to do. For some people, it's their health. For some people, they sacrifice their the social life, the personal relationships that they had. There's so many ways that you can harm yourself in pursuit of a bigger purpose, of a bigger dream. You might get there, but is it worth the cost? So I think that's the first thing that these stories have made me really have to sit and reflect on. In another video, I talked about the fear of failure and the fear of success, and I talked about how one of the biggest factors that has helped me back in my life is the fear of all the things that could go wrong if I achieved my goal. Like if I did grow this platform to its massive scale, and my music is played all over the world, and I'm a household name. These are the dreams. But in that dream, there's also a fear, like what if that happens and then I'm overly scrutinized? What if I'm not able to just live my life as a normal person anymore? What if I can't evolve normally like everybody else, where I don't have my privacy anymore, my anonymity is gone? There are all these big fears, and of course it's going to take a lot of time. In another video that I'll post after this, I talk about solitude and how much time I'm having to spend alone, and the strain that can potentially have on my personal relationships, which we cannot do this thing without a strong support system, right? So I'm thinking about all of these, what the cost of it might be to me, the time, the energy, the strain, and I'm feeling the strain at a physical level already, mental level. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? But for me, the answer is yes, because an alternative route, which is the route I have been on so far, because remember I said in another video, I will link all of those videos here, but in another video I talked about how the academic route, the route that I have been on, the journey I've been on, going through school, getting my PhD, doing my postdoc, and now working as a researcher, all of that is the path that I have currently been on, right? Which is not where the path I ideally would have liked to be on. I would have wanted to be in a more creative space, doing my music, creating content, and doing all these other fun but challenging things, right? And now that I know what that alternative path would look like, and how unsatisfied I am with it, and how just this is not what I was supposed to do with my life. How that thought has, put me through a lot of suffering in the past couple of months, is the reason why I'm like, at this point, I'm willing to see what this other side has to give me, because this is clearly not fulfilling me. If you have a sense of purpose in your life, it energizes everything that you do. You feel energized to wake up and do the things that you want to do, even if they're hard. And because the things that I'm doing are not necessarily inspiring me, I don't feel connected to what I'm doing. It just doesn't give me that energy, and so every day feels heavy. It feels harder to get through the things. And so I know that path is not gonna work for me. And my biggest fear is to go that path, and then 30 years down the line, if God blesses me with 30 more years, I'm looking back and saying, why did I not go and at least give music a good proper shot? Why didn't I commit myself to content creation? I started, I stopped, I started, I stopped. So now I don't know if it could have succeeded. Those are the regrets that I don't want to have. Maybe I do all of this and it fails and I end up back in academia, but at least I would have known that I tried. So at this moment, I'm telling myself that yes, there are costs. Yes, there are things that I'm going to sacrifice, but I have to start thinking about how can I minimize these costs, right? How can I minimize them while still being true to that purpose? The solution is not for me to run away from it, right? Because if I run away from it, I'm gonna end up in that regret state that I don't want, because I'm already feeling some of that regret for the things I didn't do in my 20s. And now I'm like, let's not repeat this in the 30s. Let's not have the same conversation when we're 40. Do you understand? And maybe I will in another way, but for right now, I'm like, I can already feel the thing in my chest. So let's do something to make sure that at the very least I can say I tried my best. So the short answer for me in this situation is, it is worth it. I am willing to take a chance, with the understanding that with my emotional intelligence, with the right people around me, with the right boundaries set, and I have videos that I have talked about all of these things, you can check them out. With all of these in place, hopefully I can, because I don't know if you speak to Wangari Maathai, if you speak to Marie Curie, I wish there was a way we could ask them these questions. Like, after everything that you've suffered, after everything that you've been through, would you make the same choices? Would you do it all over again? And I don't know what they would say, right? But I hope they would say, yes, I would do it all over again. I hope. At this point, I don't want my future to be full of regret because I was scared of a potential cost that I don't yet know. I don't know how the costs of my dreams will manifest in my life. I don't know what those costs will be. I can only know once I'm on the other side. I don't aim to neglect my relationships. I don't aim to neglect my health. I work out. I make time for my friends. I make time for my family. So I'm hoping that will carry me through, and that I never lose sight of that, and I can stay grounded while still putting as much energy as I can into the things that I want, and take reasonable breaks. Of course, rest is key. Rest is key if you're going to do it long term. You cannot do it without rest. So it's not just about being obsessively going after something and forgetting that resting is part of how you can sustain it for long. And if you are out there and you've done something really great that you are super proud of, that really took a lot out of you, do you think that it was worth it? Was the pain, the cost, the loneliness, and all the things that you might feel, was it worth it once you got to the place where you're like, I've done the thing, I've proven to myself that I can do it. Is it worth it or is it not? So that's my thinking for the first point, and that point was very long. And the second point that I want to talk about is going to go far away from what we have been talking about, but then I will bring it back. There seems to be this trend towards living an unbothered life, that it's cool to not care deeply. It's cool to not be too attached to what you are doing. It is better to come off as unbothered, like this, I'm not trying too hard. Like, people don't want to say, oh my gosh, she's so extra. You don't want people saying that about you. And it's tied in with this whole soft life narrative that's coming up as well. And I have a sense that this is coming as a resistance, a kind of challenge to hustle culture.